Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Homeland Defense and Security Information Analysis Center, HDIAC podcast. This podcast is part 2 of 2, featuring discussions about the effects of multilingualism and socio-culturalism on the brain with Dr. Tej Bhatia. Dr. Bhatia is a professor of linguistics and director of South Asian languages at Syracuse University, Syracuse, New York, and is the acting director of cognitive sciences at Syracuse University. He has been a fellow at the Center for the Study of Popular Television at the S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communication and is a faculty fellow for Forensic Sciences and National Security Institute. He has published many books, articles, and chapters about bilingualism and multiculturalism, language and social cognition, media, discourse, sociolinguistics, and the structure of English and South Asian languages. Professor Bhatia is the editor-in-chief of the Brill Research Perspectives on Multilingualism and Second Language Acquisition, and is also the Vice President and President-elect of the International Association for World Englishes. He earned his doctorate at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign.
Now that we have discussed the factors that make a multilingual brain and a socio-cultural brain, how are they utilized in the actions of diplomacy?
Very important question. Yes, very happy to answer this. Well, one thing, again, which is worthy of pointing out at this point, that multilinguals have worldviews which are rendered by different languages, or what I said earlier, well, they have linguistic bonus. So socio-cultural value system from different the languages and the views from different language make simply it has an advantage for diplomats. And bilinguals and multilinguals, the research on multilingualism and bilingualism shows that multilinguals are better problem solvers and they are skillful negotiators. Monolinguals do not have that advantage. As a result, if you look at the history of political treaties, many times with serious failure took place because multilingual understanding was not there, and the mind negotiating those treaties was simply monolingual mind. So, so it's self-evident in multilingual brain skills to simply incorporate diversity and the inclusion.
So, to continue on the same track of diplomacy, how is national security affected by multilingualism and socio-culturalism? For example, can you comment on the effect it may have when it comes to radicalization?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Excellent question. Yes. Multilingualism or multiculturalism is a blessing for national security, and we need to, our infrastructure, our officers engage in intelligence gathering. They need to make use of that one in multilingual, make use of the multilingual, multicultural aspect. So it is blessing in the sense, to give you an example, multilingual always brings something new in terms of intelligence. Multilingual ingenuity can bring you, for example, to victories. Victories in the Second World War, in the Pacific with Japan. Well, how did we win war? Because it was not that we could create mathematical secret codes, but basically Navajo speaker, code talker, Navajo ended up creating, because of their multilingual skills, ended up creating the secret code. And Japan, in spite of their mechanical and mathematical ability to crack the code, they could not crack the code because these codes were basically, in a natural language based type of code. So for bilingualism, multilingualism, that ingenuity rendered by bilingualism is simply, create some kind of different codes. That's one example. And also it can provide us deeper understanding into the radicalization of the mind. Multilinguals can read those, the language shifting, language mixing type of signs, which monolinguals cannot. So, for example, if I see the sort of chronological account of some terrorist, I can or we can simply see how the language shift from one language to another. Remember earlier I did mention that ability to keep the two linguistic systems separate and integrate, that capacity simply help us read the mind of probe into the mind of terrorists, can even show you using language evidence that how the brain or the mind is being radicalized. Conversely, if we do not have that asset, then we see that an ample example of failure, colossal failure in security studies. So take, for example, the unfortunate bombing of the 9/11 terrorist bombing. So at that time, we discovered that there was, we had serious gaps in our infrastructure, security infrastructure, because we did not have the multilinguals, who could translate documents from one language to another one. So as a result, simply, there was a serious gap in our national security, and the main factor behind that gap was multilingualism or the lack of multilingual. Also, now we realize, for example, universities, we want to train the future, our future diplomat, intelligence officer, simply learn more languages and basically have more linguistic skills. Not only linguistic skills, but also script-based writing scripts, writing skills as well. So, for example, we today, like Syracuse University, we are engaged in teaching of or teaching of uncommonly taught languages, which are our asset for national security. So the continuing with the theme of national security, it is very important to recognize that bilinguals or multilingual, they are better information gatherer, they create new knowledge based systems, and they are better information provider. Let me give you an example from psychiatrics. It has been shown psychiatrists, and they have more capability of getting better information from bilinguals than from monolingual. And similarly, the other side is that bilinguals can provide to bilingual investigators or psychiatrists better or different, qualitatively and quantitatively different information than the monolingual will provide. So the idea is that they are better information provider, information gatherer. So it doesn't, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand its serious implication for national security.
That's great insight, Dr. Bhatia. Lastly, how are economics and commerce on a national scale impacted by socio-cultural and multilingualism?
Yes, research on bilingualism and national development shows that countries which subscribe to multilingual language policies, they also promote economic development. In a way, there's a close relationship between languages and economic development. So one language policies, other one which is self-evident in the sense, well, languages create different job markets. Advertising, for example. Advertising, you find what's called target advertising, segment advertising, while advertisers and marketers want to reach different groups. Not one size fits all, one language fits all. They adapt their language and try to reach out to different social segments. So, like for example, language mixing with Spanish in advertising and marketing is a very important tool to reach out hmm, or win the hearts of Spanish English bilingual. So job market, the new emerging new markets, economic, basically bilingualism is the economic engine country, and that engine also basically shapes, has the better ability to shape language, some kind of national policies.
Dr. Bhatia, it's been a privilege having you on the HDIAC podcast. I'm very appreciative for all the insight and knowledge that you've shared with all of us about multilingualism and the socio-cultural brain, and I look forward to hearing from you again.
Same thing here. Thank you very much, Quentin. I really enjoyed talking about this.
Thank you for joining the HDIAC podcast. To learn more about our other services, please reach out directly or visit us online at www.hdIAC.org.